There are there are a lot of health related websites and forums which we can use. For our proof of concept, we use Twitter as our data source. So to access Twitter data using Twitter APIs, we need to create an account, developer's account on the Twitter website. So to create this account, we need to fill an application. Once approved, we are assigned with tokens and keys to query the Twitter data using Twitter APIs. Twitter has different level of subscriptions, standard and premium. Standard is free and premiums are paid. For example, if you want 10,000 tweets per request, so monthly charge is something around $2,500. For our project, we use standard subscription. In this standard subscription, we can download per request 100 tweets from last 6 to 9 days. So when we initially started our project, we chose 8 drugs. Some are from GSK like Benlysta, Dovato, Shingrix, and some are some famous drugs like pembrolizumab, Humira. So we were downloading tweets every week on all these 8 drugs, which we chose to build our database. Next slide. Once we have this database, once we have this data, so we need to tag for adverse event. We need to classify these tweets for adverse events. If you are a Twitter user, you might know that on Twitter people uses slang language. So it becomes very difficult to analyze this data. So when we initially started, we used off-the-shelf NLP tagger from Stanford University to tag for AEs, but that doesn't work out well for us. And the main reasons were the UTF-8 coding, the slang language. So we decided to go with our own rule-based algorithm. For our own rule-based algorithm, we need to still do some pre-processing. So we need to remove some tags. We need to update for UTF-8 coding. We need to remove news and media tweets. We need to remove non-English tweets and so forth. For tagging AEs, we use CTC AE terms and along with the slang terms. For example, fever, bruise, ache, pain, reaction, and there are some other terms which we use to tag for AEs. So when we are looking at this tweet data and when we see some real tweets with about adverse events, we have seen that people generally use participle, fast, gerunds as verbs, and they also use first person, third person pronouns. So we added that layer in our algorithm. We will give you some more examples in next couple of slides. And then we call this algorithm as MV algorithm based on our statistician name. So I will hand over to Azia to give you some more examples.
So now that we have the data, we need to classify it. This slide gives you kind of the landscape of Twitter and what kind of data you can get from the tweets. These are example tweets for Shingrix, which is the shingles vaccine. You'll notice the green highlighted text is the drug name, and the yellow highlighted text are words that can be picked up and flagged as adverse events. Now, from these, you can discard and decide which ones you want to keep. Now, if you're familiar with the package insert for Shingrix, you'll know that the bottom left post would be flagged as an adverse event because of some of the words used, such as pain and also the laying around all day, the flu. These may indicate malaise. So this may be an obvious yes, Others can be less so. For example, the top right tweet says, "The dose kicked my butt." Well, when manually reviewing it, you may flag it, especially if it's bad enough for the patient to stay home from work, but having an algorithm do that labeling may be a bit tricky. It's one of the main challenges of using social media data, being able to map slang text to standard medical dictionary terms and getting meaningful analyses from the data. Another challenge are the words themselves. In these examples, the drug names are spelled correctly when that may not always be the case with social media. Later, we'll take a look at how these can be addressed. Next slide. So in the data sample that we reviewed, we noticed some grammatical trends in the tweets that were flagged as yes, reporting an adverse event. For AEs, we typically saw the subject was first person singular. For example, I had a bad reaction to Cosentyx, which is the first tweet example you'll see on the slide. Or they use personal pronouns like me. Whereas those that were flagged as no contain publication or news related terminology such as single agent or patients, or the subject or object of the statement was an organization, such as the example with the FDA, which is the last one on this slide. And this goes back to the diagram that Amit had just previously shown us with the data processing. Next slide. So this slide builds off the previous one that we saw that whether a tweet was categorized as yes or no, both contained the drug name and adverse event term simply because we were picking up these keywords. The key differences summarized in the table are shown so that you'll see that having an AE, typically the tweet would have a first person pronoun or was written in the past tense, for example, I had, or having an active voice, for example, I experienced, whereas those flagged as no were typically written in the passive voice. For example, the trial was conducted, the report was written, and contained, as I said, publication or finance related terms such as randomized or market shares. Next slide. For our proof of concept, we envisioned a dashboard where the FDA can pull tweets in for interested search terms and do all the processing directly in the dashboard. Our long-term vision would be to pull in the AE tweets, look at Google Trends and search spikes, and compare these with OpenFDA and FAIRS and other reporting systems, and to use them hand in hand for a more comprehensive AE profile for a drug. So now I'll hand it over to Ben for a brief walkthrough of the dashboard.
Thanks, Azia. Can you guys see the dashboard?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, thanks. We were kind of envisioning an analyst, maybe from the FDA, coming into this dashboard, and they would be able to select from a couple different menu tabs. The first one is the backbone. That's where you would import, tag, and review the tweets. But this could be upgraded to other social media such as Facebook or Reddit. Then the analyst could possibly look over some summary statistics of the tweets that were flagged and some simple listings. And then that same analyst can move into exploring OpenFDA's analytics on the AEs or even go in deeper into other social media. So here we'll start in looking at importing, tagging, and reviewing the tweets. So here we've given the option for, this is just a subset of drugs, but the analyst could come in and choose from a list of drugs. So here we're just going to choose Pembro. As Azia mentioned, slang terms are a big issue in misspellings. So the analyst could add in new terms to search for the tweets. So they could do, for Pembro, they could enter Pembro or Pembra. or other misspellings that maybe they could pick up. They could then get new tweets by querying the Twitter database and run our auto tagger that Amit explained a little bit about. And the biggest thing that we think is necessary is being able to go through and look through the tweets to make sure that they're being tagged correctly. So the analyst could go in and look and say that this one was discarded on accident, and we should select this. So obviously this one is not one that we want to select, so we do want to keep it in the discarded pile. So that's something we identified, was that we need to have folks to build up a good training database for any machine learning algorithms, is the ability to manually review the tagged tweets. So if we had a sample database of tweets, the analyst could also come in and explore what AE terms were identified in the tweets. So here they could select on different terms that were flagged as AEs, and the analyst can again look through and see that there were 2 tweets and see if these are actually being flagged correctly. They could also go in and check out the listing of tweets, see which ones were discarded, which ones were selected by the algorithm. And then finally, we were thinking that perhaps after exploring one drug, they would want to explore other drugs. So here they could look at the Google search history to see what search terms were being, what drugs were being searched for on Google. So you could go through different drugs. We'll go back to Pembro, and you can see a large spike in 2016, maybe a little medium spike in April 15th. And so maybe this would be a good sense to go in and query the Twitter database around this time to see if we could get some better tweets to build up a training database. And then finally we envisioned that the analysts wouldn't have to leave the dashboard. They could use the OpenFDA database to kind of explore different drugs. This is dummy data. This isn't actually querying the OpenFDA yet. But they could go through and use different visualizations to kind of explore what the drugs are, or what the AEs are for different drugs. So that's our dashboard demo, and I'll hand it back to Amit.
So some of the enhancements that we'd like to make for the dashboard include Medra coding. We, as Ben explained, use dummy data to populate the OpenFDA tab in the dashboard. But once added, we can do comparisons with Google Trend spikes for the drug and compare with reports coming into the FDA. Another thing we'd like to do is add additional social media platforms such as Facebook and Reddit. The advantage of something like Reddit or Daily Strength, these are anonymous forums, so we're hoping that people are more likely to post because of this. Next slide. So future development will include natural language processing and investigating using transformer models, which is an option that has been quite popular. These are models that are already trained in text language, so you can use it off the shelf. We could add the grammatical layer that we had described earlier, and then refine for adverse events by using AE-specific training data. This can help with scaling up as it can remove the manual review process, and transformer models are also able to take into account variations in spelling and errors. So some of these models can be found in our guidance document, which should be on the Fuse website. Next slide. Next slide.
he loses.
So Ben, I don't know if you can hear us, if you're having technical difficulties, but we're unable to move on to the next slide. Can you hear us?
Hi, Wendy, can you pass the ball to me so maybe I can try sharing?
Thank you very much, Brian. If you could take that action, please.
We can see your screen now on it.
Okay.
Sorry, everybody. Internet's been crashing a lot the last week.
Hey, Ben, I am sharing now, so I will continue from here.
Okay.
Okay. Everybody can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
If you want to put it in presentation mode. And just from current slide, the second button from the left. Yeah.
Okay, so to wrap up, from this proof of concept, we try to answer a few questions. Can this social media present a viable method for detecting AEs? From our very limited Twitter data, we only labeled 1% of tweets as true AEs. And our algorithm also has high false positive rate. That's one of the reasons we added the manual review in our tool. So to create a robust and scalable model and tool, we need two things. We need to tap other sources of the data. For example, Facebook, we have Reddit, other websites, and we need premium subscription on these main platforms. We have also seen that on Twitter, people uses layman slang language and they don't know exact meta standardized terms. So we need to create some common set of tags for training our data sets on AI ML approaches. For example, we can use transformer models, which can be helpful in detecting AEs in the approved drugs. So in the end, I like to thank Fuse and FDA for bringing up this challenge, because this is a great learning experience for all of us. And I also like to thank our team for their hard work, and Anup and Michael for their support and guidance. And I also like to thank all of you for listening.